The homeowners association was allowed to erect 512 dwellings on my property, and I offered no objection, not when they subjected me to verbal abuse, nor when they involved the sheriff, not even when their president declared ownership of my land. Today, I walk into the courtroom with a single item they never anticipated: the property deed. Most individuals following this saga online are already aware of that development. What remains unknown is how a reserved, middle-aged structural engineer found himself at the epicenter of the most significant land acquisition controversy this state has ever witnessed. My name is Logan Hale. I am 52 years old enough to possess wisdom, yet young enough to retaliate when circumstances strike first. And life had indeed struck with considerable force. On the morning I parked my aged Ford in front of the Boulder County Courthouse, I was clad in the only suit I possess, the same attire I wore to my daughter's university commencement 7 years prior. It no longer fit comfortably. The passage of time alters a man's physique, as does the burden of a confrontation one did not initiate. The February air, swept down from the Rockies, was sharp and dry enough to pierce through wool. Individuals milled about the plaza, legal professionals in polished footwear, concerned parents clutching documentation, and journalists seeking any whiff of scandal. Within my briefcase lay a single document predating most of them, a deed, aged and faintly scented with tobacco, signed by my grandfather in 1974. Each time my fingers grazed that paper, his voice echoed in my memory. If they ever try to seize what is ours, Logan, do not surrender it to those scoundrels. For the greater part of my existence, I dismissed his words as mere melodrama. It transpires he possessed a far more profound understanding of the world than I. As I approached the courthouse steps, camera shutters clicked incessantly, resembling hailstones pelting a tin roof. A reporter thrust forward, shouting, "Mr. Hale, are you genuinely planning to dispossess 500 families?" I did not even turn my head. If there is one lesson I have absorbed in my 52 years, it is that arguing with a throng, armed with metaphorical pitchforks of public opinion, is futile. All that truly mattered would be articulated within. And then, before me, the imposing wooden portals of Courtroom 4C swung open. For a fleeting instant, the entire world seemed to contract into absolute stillness, that peculiar, profound quiet that precedes a tempest. If you had informed me a year ago that I would be standing here, initiating legal proceedings against a multi-million-dollar developer, a compromised homeowners association board, and a half-dozen attorneys, I would have dismissed it with hearty laughter. However, adversity possesses a sharp edge, and some individuals only comprehend justice when it finally makes its impact. Thus, I adjusted the constricting collar of that venerable suit, drew a breath, and stepped inside, prepared to elucidate to the judge precisely how 512 residences came to be situated on land that never ceased to be mine. And herein lies the commencement of the true narrative. Before we delve into the intricacies of the fabricated documents, the earth-moving machinery, and the president of the Homeowners Association, capable of reducing a man to dust with a single glare, it is imperative to understand the genesis of this entire affair. My grandfather, Walter Hale, acquired those tracts of mountainous forest land in 1974. He paid in cash. No financing, no partners, no undisclosed agreements, merely a canvas bag filled with currency earned from lumber mill operations and mechanic work. The sort of labor that leaves indelible marks upon a man's hands. The acreage was substantial, comprising 320 acres of rugged terrain, timber, and open sky. It was a domain where one could traverse for half a day and never retrace their steps, a sanctuary where a person could intentionally vanish and still find solace. He once confided that he purchased it because it evoked a sense of tranquility he believed lost forever after his experiences in Vietnam. My grandfather was not prone to poetic pronouncements, yet occasionally a man utters words devoid of intended profundity that resonate nonetheless. We spent our summers on that property, a battered Airstream trailer nestled beneath the Ponderosa pines, coffee brewed vigorously in a dented percolator. I, a barefoot child, would chase elk tracks. He, meanwhile, would hone his tools on a whetstone, humming a tune slightly off-key. He would offer observations like, "Trees do not deceive, Logan. People do. Choose whom you wish for company." He meticulously preserved every document, every invoice, every land survey map, every record of timber sales, all meticulously catalogued within leather-bound ledgers that carried the scent of tobacco and bygone rain. These very ledgers would ultimately prove instrumental in securing my entire case. Upon his passing in 2016, he bequeathed the land to me. Enclosed with the deed was a handwritten note in his characteristically fine yet resolute script: "Do not let the scoundrels seize what belongs to you." At the age of 46, I perceived this as a warning against a hypothetical threat. At 52, I recognized his prescient understanding of the world surpassed my own. Following his death, life scattered my focus in myriad directions. Divorce, children reaching adulthood, demanding 14-hour shifts at the engineering firm, all while striving to maintain the fragments of my identity from drifting too far apart. People frequently assert, "If you cared, you would find the time." However, the reality is far more straightforward. Sometimes one distances themselves because revisiting cherished memories alone proves too emotionally taxing. Consequently, I neglected to visit the land for months. These months gradually morphed into seasons, and then these seasons accumulated into years. Yet unfailingly, every April, I remitted the property taxes. 8 substantial payments annually for those 320 acres of pristine woodland. These payments originated from construction sites, parking lots, and even once during a virtual meeting when my supervisor mistakenly believed I was taking notes. The payments were never late, never missed. It was only in August of the previous year, when my daughter inquired about my plans for scattering my grandfather's ashes, that I truly comprehended the extent of my absence. Accordingly, I placed the urn in the passenger seat, packed a thermos of coffee, and embarked on the mountain road, hoping the land would still evoke the sense of affection I once held for it. However, the initial anomaly I observed was the asphalt. It was new, smooth, and excessively wide for a local government budget. Then, a turn lane that had never previously existed. Subsequently, gravel markers, survey stakes, subtle indicators that the landscape had been irrevocably altered without my consent. And then, the stone monument, a polished granite structure as imposing as a headstone, bearing the inscription, "Ridgeline Meadows, a luxury community, established 2023. My land had no designation. It possessed no community. It represented a lifetime poured into the soil and a solemn vow inscribed on a deed older than most individuals in Boulder. I gazed at that sign and whispered, "Grandfather, they have taken it nonetheless." Yet I had not yet encountered the residences, the thoroughfares, the moving vans, the guarded entrance, or the venomous individual adorned in high fashion awaiting beyond it. The president of the Homeowners Association, who would soon commit her most grievous error. That chapter was still to unfold, and it would fundamentally reshape everything. A disquieting sensation began to churn in my gut as I steered the truck past the imposing stone monument, Ridgeline Meadows, a name etched in granite as if it had always held dominion there. The paved road that ensued was once a rudimentary dirt track navigated by my grandfather and me in an antiquated Ford. Now it was 6 inches of freshly laid asphalt, as unblemished as the surface of a showroom vehicle. I proceeded with caution. Initially, my view was obstructed by treetops. Then, the landscape opened and the ridge descended into a panorama that stole my breath. Residences, numbering in the hundreds, sprawled across my 320 acres, akin to a harvest reaped without authorization. From this elevated vantage point on the road, the entire valley basin was visible. Intricate street grids, cul-de-sacs, rooftops, manicured medians, and even what appeared to be a clubhouse dome shimmering in the sunlight, the kind of vista a developer would prominently feature in promotional materials, the kind of vista a landowner should never encounter for the first time under such circumstances. I drove towards a cluster of structures situated at the base of the development. Large banners declared, Model homes open daily, sales center. Naturally, model homes were strategically positioned outside the main entrance, allowing public access. It was there I observed them: a mother with a stroller, a gentleman inspecting the porch of a compact dwelling, a couple deliberating over color choices for the exterior. They offered me smiles as if I were another prospective buyer, envisioning granite countertops and soaring ceilings. I did not reciprocate their smiles. I could not. Their aspiration was constructed upon the foundation of my family's legacy. I proceeded slowly around the loop, encircling the sales center, observing the meticulously crafted scene. The manufactured charm, the aroma of new construction, the ersatz sense of community. Everything exuded such a polished veneer that it was frankly nauseating. Beyond the model homes, the reality materialized. The main gate. It stood precisely where my grandfather's old firebreak had once commenced, a location where he had once instructed me in the art of splitting kindling. Now it was transformed into a formidable bastion, a stucco gatehouse, a roof of Spanish tiles, 2 lanes, one designated for residents, the other for guests, flagpoles, a keypad entry system, and an automated barrier arm. Security cameras were positioned in every conceivable direction. A grand iron archway proclaimed, "Ridgeline, Meadows Private Homeowners Community." I maneuvered the vehicle into the guest lane. A security guard emerged, young and visibly apprehensive, clad in a tactical vest that seemed more theatrical than authoritative. He raised a hand. "Sir, this gate is for residents and authorized visitors only." I offered no response, not at the moment, for standing directly behind him, perfectly framed by the archway, was her, the Viper in designer heels, tall, impeccably groomed, with hair the shade of blonde one typically achieves at a high-end salon in Cherry Creek. Her clip-on HOA badge gleamed under the sun. She was not smiling. She was assessing me. The guard persisted, his voice louder. "Sir, I will require you to turn back unless you have official business within." I reached into the passenger compartment, retrieved the leather folder, and tapped it twice with my fingertips. Then I met the guard's gaze and stated, "Son, I am precisely where I am meant to be." The guard hesitated. People are unaccustomed to placid individuals, particularly older gentlemen who refrain from raising their voices. The woman advanced. "Do you reside here?" she inquired, her voice as smooth as glass over hidden shards of glass. I gestured past her towards the hundreds of homes extending across the valley. Then I uttered the phrase that would haunt them for months. All of them. Her smile faltered, a fleeting flicker, but undeniable. "Sir," she said deliberately, "this community falls under the jurisdiction of the Ridgeline Meadows HOA. Should you have inquiries, you will need to schedule an appointment with our administrative office." She indicated a sleek glass edifice situated within the gate's confines. I exited the truck, my boots making contact with the asphalt that had been laid over my grandfather's former path. Every movement was deliberate. The guard exhibited signs of panic. "Sir, you cannot enter, sir." However, the woman raised her hand. "Allow him," she commanded. "He will not proceed far." I offered no reply. It was unnecessary, for in that precise instant, amidst the frigid quietude separating her arrogance from my measured steps, a stark realization dawned upon me. She had no inkling of my identity. She was unaware of the document I held in my hand, and she most certainly did not comprehend that I possessed ownership of the very earth beneath her $1,000 heels. I advanced towards the gatehouse, towards the HOA administrative center, towards the conflict that had already commenced. Behind me, the guard muttered, "Who is that gentleman?" She responded with a dismissive shrug, the last gesture of confidence she would ever exhibit. Just some elderly fellow? Oh, if only she had known. The HOA administrative building resembled something from a resort catalog. Expansive glass walls, imposing stone pillars, and a brushed metal logo mounted above the dual entrance. It had no place on my grandfather's ridge. None of it did. I ascended the steps deliberately, not due to fatigue, but because every inch of concrete beneath my boots had once been a carpet of pine needles and soil. Behind me, The security guard murmured to himself, "Why does he walk as if he owns the premises?" I did, and he would soon grasp that fact. The double doors glided open, releasing a rush of chilled air. The scent of lavender air freshener, polished floors. That sterile humming ambiance, characteristic of environments where administrative tasks are perceived as paramount. A young receptionist offered a polite smile from behind her counter. "Good morning. How may I assist you today?" I place my leather folder gently, almost deferentially, upon the counter. "I need to speak with whomever is in charge." Her smile wavered. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Are you a resident?" "In a manner of speaking," I replied. She hesitated, clearly uncertain how to categorize me. Before she could prolong the deliberation, a familiar cadence echoed across the tiled floor. Heels clicking, sharp, confident, and expensive. The president of the HOA materialized. Up close, she bore an even stronger resemblance to a viper in designer footwear. Tall, with immaculate hair, her clip-on HOA badge gleamed as if it possessed genuine authority. "Sarah, I will handle this," she instructed the receptionist. She then addressed me. "This way, please." It was not a request, nor precisely an order, but rather that peculiar tone employed by HOA officials, presuming the entire world conforms to their architectural regulations. I followed her into a conference room enclosed by glass walls. Inside, shelves were laden with binders, CC&R violations, compliance logs, architectural reviews. She took a seat. I remained standing. "I am Karen Whitmore," she announced, president of the Ridgeline Meadows Homeowners Association. Naturally, her name was Karen. Some coincidences are too fitting to dispute. "Precisely what is the purpose of your visit?" she inquired. I placed the leather folder on the table situated between us. "This land," I stated quietly, "belongs to me." She blinked once, then again, and then a slow, patronizing smile spread across her face, radiating pure condescension. "Oh, you are one of them." "One of whom?" "The holdouts," she declared, waving a dismissive hand. "There are invariably one or two individuals who believe they still possess claims due to outdated documents or sentimental paperwork." My jaw tightened. "Nothing about my claim is outdated." She sighed with what appeared to be pity. "Look, I'm certain you genuinely believe that, but Whitmore Development legally acquired and integrated this land in 2021. All parcels were consolidated. Whatever document you believe you possess, your deed or your grandfather's deed, is no longer valid." I tapped the leather folder. Her demeanor softened. "Manipulative. Practiced. If you wish, I can assist you in applying for our relocation assistance program. We offer compensation for legacy confusion. A few $1,000s typically resolves the matter." The room seemed to grow colder, not due to the air conditioning, but because of the sheer audacity. I opened the leather folder with deliberate slowness. Inside lay the original deed, yellowed with age, its edges softened by time, carrying the faint aroma of my grandfather's pipe tobacco. I slid it across the table towards her. She did not touch it. "Mr. Hale," I said. "Logan Hale." A spark of recognition flickered in her eyes. Merely a spark, but enough to confirm she had encountered the name during a board meeting and had hoped never to face its possessor in person. She leaned forward. "Mr. Hale, this community is fully operational. People reside here. Children attend school here. You cannot simply enter and—" "I am not entering to claim anything," I interrupted. "I am here to inform you of what already exists." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I will have security escort you out," she declared. "And if you return without legal counsel, you will be considered a trespasser. This is the HOA." Her sentence was abruptly cut short by a voice emanating from the doorway. Miss Whitmore." The security guard stood there, holding a tablet. His face had turned ashen. She snapped, "What is it?" He stepped forward hesitantly. I attempted to access the GIS parcel map for this building to confirm something," she demanded. "And?" He turned the tablet so she could view it. "Well, the parcel identification for this HOA office. He swallowed. It's showing as invalid. It does not exist. Karen stared at him, utterly stunned. What? He tapped again. It's not a valid parcel. There's no lot number, no permit history, no zoning record, nothing. It's as if the building is not legally present. Her face drained of all color. I retrieved the deed, sliding it back into the leather folder. Have a pleasant day, Miss Whitmore. You are not going anywhere, she retorted, but her voice cracked for the first time since she had constructed her diminutive empire of fines, rules, and power plays. She stood within a building that, legally speaking, did not exist on land she did not own, and she knew the truth was rapidly closing in. I did not drive home that evening. The truth was, I had no residence in the vicinity of Boulder. My former home had been awarded to my ex-wife, and my apartment in Golden was too distant to risk driving after the day's events. A primal instinct, ancient and honed by years of experience, urged me to avoid any predictable destination. Consequently, I secured lodging at a roadside motel off Highway 36. Room 12, a single queen bed, curtains as thin as paper, the kind of establishment where the air perpetually carries the scent of stale cigarettes, even in designated non-smoking rooms. I sat on the edge of the bed, my boots still on, my gaze fixed on the muted television, attempting to process the sights I'd witnessed, the words Karen had spoken, and the situation into which I had stepped. Around 8:30, my phone vibrated. Mr. Hale, this is Deputy Rollins with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. Merely hearing Sheriff's Office sent a jolt of apprehension through me. He explained calmly, almost wearily, that the HOA had lodged a complaint accusing me of refusing to vacate private property and causing distress among residents. Deputy, I stated, that woman lied directly to your face, and I informed her I possessed the title. I hear you, he replied. However, this is a civil matter, and civil matters are not resolved at gunpoint in someone's driveway. They are resolved in court. A prolonged pause ensued before he added, my advice, secure legal representation, a competent attorney, someone thoroughly versed in land use law. I did not have a writing instrument readily available. Therefore, I retrieved a motel napkin from beneath my coffee cup and scribbled down the name he provided, Amelia Rhodes. The call concluded, and for the subsequent few hours, I allowed myself to believe the night's events had reached their conclusion. They had not by a significant margin. At 11:45 p.m., a forceful, sharp knock reverberated against my door, the kind of knock that offers no inquiry but serves as a warning. I peered through the peephole. A man stood there, dressed in civilian attire, perhaps in his late 40s. His boots were too immaculate for a traveler. His posture was too composed for someone under the influence of alcohol. His eyes held an unnerving calmness for someone engaged in legitimate business. I opened the door a mere 2 inches, keeping the security chain engaged. He offered a polite smile, yet it failed to reach his eyes. Evening, Mr. Hale. My voice remained low. Do we know each other? No, sir. However, my employer is acquainted with you. There it was. The unvarnished truth, swift and chilling. What do you want? I've merely come to deliver a message. He lifted a clipboard. Ridgeline Meadows is issuing a formal no trespass notice. Any return to the property will result in legal action. I stared at him. Is that all? He leaned in, lowering his voice. Mr. Whitmore prefers his problems to remain discreet. He hopes you understand that. Is that a threat? No, sir. Threats possess a different tone. Behind him, a black SUV idled, its headlights extinguished. A silhouette in the driver's seat remained motionless. These were not HOA volunteers. They were not code enforcement officers. They were not even amateurs. This was the caliber of personnel developers engage when significant financial stakes are involved and ethical considerations are deemed optional. I shut the door, secured all locks, extinguished the lights, and sat in darkness. For the first time that day, a sense of fear permeated me. Not the kind that impels a man to flee, but the kind that brings the realization of facing something substantial, something larger than a homeowners association, larger than Karen, larger than a zoning anomaly. something organized, well-funded, and utterly prepared to engage in unscrupulous tactics. I reached into my wallet and withdrew the motel napkin upon which I had scribbled the name Deputy Rawlins had mentioned, Amelia Rhodes. Beneath it I had noted a number which I proceeded to dial. A voice answered after a single ring. "This is Rhodes." She did not sound weary. She did not sound irritated. She did not even sound surprised to receive a call near midnight. I heard the click of a lighter, a slow exhale, the rustle of paper. She was actively engaged in her work. "Rhodes," I stated carefully. "My name is Logan Hale. I believe someone has just attempted to intimidate me from my own land. Tell me everything." So I did. The gatehouse, Karen, the enforcer, the threats, the falsehoods, the residences, the deed. She listened intently, without a single interruption. When I concluded, a prolonged silence followed. Then, "Mr. Hale, you need to come to my office in the morning." Her tone shifted, becoming sharper, colder, more analytical. "Because based on your description, this is not merely an HOA dispute." Another pause. "This constitutes fraud, potentially organized, possibly federal." "What should I do tonight?" "Keep the curtains drawn," she advised. "Do not open the door for anyone. Charge your phone and attempt to sleep if you can." "Why?" "Because tomorrow," she declared, "we commence the counteroffensive." Her lighter clicked again. "And Mr. Hale, bring that deed with you. You will require it." The morning sun's rays, filtered through the cheap motel curtains, appeared more intense. They sliced across my boots, my jacket, and the worn motel carpet in thin, orange stripes. I had not slept. Not genuinely. My mind incessantly replayed the enforcer's words at the doorway. By 7:10 in the morning, I had completed my ablutions, shaved, and committed the property document to memory for the 100th time. Amelia Arich's legal practice was situated in the heart of Denver, occupying a venerable 4-story brick structure nestled between a bail bonds office and a purveyor of fine cigars. It was precisely the sort of locale where genuine legal disputes unfolded, devoid of ostentatious marble flooring or the saccharine smiles of junior associates. Her name was elegantly rendered in white serif lettering, stenciled onto the door: Amelia Rhodes, ESQ, specializing in land use, property rights, and title litigation. Upon entering, the atmosphere was redolent of freshly brewed coffee, aged paper, and a faint wisp of cigarette smoke. She emerged from a frosted glass portal, her gray hair cropped short, clad in a black blazer over dark denim, her gaze possessing a sharpness capable of dissecting any obstacle. "You've arrived," she stated. "Indeed, ma'am. Did you bring the deed?" I presented the leather-bound folder. She acknowledged with a slight nod, a flicker of approval in her eyes. "Follow me." Her private chambers resembled the interior of a general's command center. Maps adorned every available surface, zoning schematics lay spread across tables, and a whiteboard was densely populated with arrows, dates, and names. "Sit," she directed. I complied. "Commence from the inception at a leisurely pace." I recounted the entire narrative: the monument sign, the residential structures, Karen's presence at the gate, the sheriff's involvement, and the intermediary who appeared at my motel room. She listened intently, offering no interruption, her penmanship a series of small, precise marks on her notepad. Once I had concluded, she opened the deed, her thumb brushing against the embossed seal. "This," she declared in a hushed tone, "is the original. Excellent." She navigated the county land records on her laptop, displaying parcel numbers, plat maps, and zoning classifications. Then she paused the screen. "Hale, observe." My grandfather's parcel, designated 143A7Z7, materialized, accompanied by a red flag icon, indicating an unknown owner, disputed status, a pending review note, and a document mismatch flag. A knot tightened in my stomach. "What does that signify?" "It signifies an attempt to register something against your property," she explained, which the system subsequently rejected. She opened the flagged portable document format file, revealing a quitclaim deed bearing my name. However, the signature was unmistakably not mine. "They fabricated it," I stated. "Undoubtedly," she concurred, her demeanor calm yet sharp. "And rather crudely, I might add. Likely executed hastily during the initial phase of construction." She took a deliberate puff of her cigarette, exhaling through the slightly ajar window. Subsequently, she produced the construction permits. Not a single one was linked to my parcel number. "Hale," she declared, tapping the screen, "every edifice within Ridgeline Meadows stands on land lacking a legitimate chain of title." I stroked my jawline. "So, what course of action do we pursue? Initiate a declaratory judgment and halt the development?" She turned abruptly. "No, absolutely not." She leaned forward, her eyes burning with intensity. "Hale, listen to me with utmost concentration. Halting the development at this juncture is precisely their desired outcome." I expressed my confusion. "That makes no logical sense." "It makes complete sense," she countered. "If we cease their operations today, they will claim ignorance. They will attribute blame to a clerical error. They will declare bankruptcy, dissolve the limited liability company, and depart having reaped millions from the residences they have already sold." She slid the forged deed back towards me. "For their actions to constitute a criminal offense, they must complete the entirety of their scheme." I gazed at her, bewildered. "Are you suggesting we allow them to continue building?" "I am suggesting we permit them to finalize all transactions," she clarified. "Allow them to register every fraudulent sale. Allow them to pocket every cent. Allow them to deepen the chasm they are digging to a point where even their legal counsel cannot extricate them." She pointed to the county map. "Phases 1, 2, and 3 are all meticulously laid out. When the final residence is sold, when the last family moves in, when the homeowners association collects its initial full year of dues, that is when the fraud escalates to a systemic level." She lowered her voice, adding, "And systemic fraud," she emphasized, "opens the door to racketeer influenced and corrupt organizations charges." I swallowed. "Organized crime, conspiracy to defraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, forgery, title tampering, zoning manipulation, and misrepresentation in interstate commerce." She reclined in her chair. "They will not merely owe you compensation, they will owe treble damages, 3 times the profit." I stared at the deed clutched in my hands. "And what is the projected profit?" She offered a wry smile. "With 512 homes, conservatively estimated between $60 and $80 million. My breath hitched. "So if I wait, I stand to gain more?" "If you wait," she confirmed, "you stand to gain everything, and they will lose everything." Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. "However, I must be candid, Hale. Waiting carries inherent risks. They have already dispatched an individual to your residence. The next time, he will not be alone." "I am capable of defending myself." "Indeed," she acknowledged, "but you are venturing into a hornet's nest. This is not merely theft, it is a meticulously constructed engine, a money-generating apparatus. And such machines do not surrender willingly." I nodded slowly. "What assistance do you require from me?" "Evidence," she stated. "Every fragment you possess, photographs, notes, receipts, your grandfather's correspondence, anything at all." She extended her hand. "We will undertake this endeavor collectively, but only if you are prepared to see it through to its conclusion." I clasped her hand. Her grip was like steel. "Welcome to the conflict, Mr. Hale." Autumn had begun its descent upon the Front Range, the kind of Colorado fall where the air carries the scent of cold stone and pine needles. I spent most mornings driving to the overlook, offering a panoramic view of Ridgeline Meadows, observing the relentless machinery at work, bulldozers sculpting the hillside, concrete trucks queuing along the temporary access road, and foundations emerging like gray squares across the valley floor. It was during this period that the initial rumor surfaced. Disseminated through social media, cloaked in vibrant warning emojis, and authored by an individual who had never encountered me, it alleged a suspicious older male photographing families and refusing to depart when confronted, with authorities reportedly notified. Accompanying the post was a grainy, zoomed-in photograph of me, taken from an undisclosed vantage point. My daughter saw it before I did. Her text message conveyed fear and confusion. I assured her it was untrue, but falsehoods, I've learned, travel with far less encumbrance than truth. They possess a significantly swifter momentum. By Thanksgiving, the rumor had gained considerable traction. I was now depicted as a prowler lurking near homes, tailing joggers, and casing residences. None of it bore any resemblance to reality, but logic was not the objective. The objective was to sow seeds of discord. Periodically, I would patronize a local diner, gas station, or grocery store, and I would invariably feel the weight of stares and overhear hushed whispers. The pattern was consistently the same. Someone would recognize me from the posts, pull out their phone, snap a picture, and share it within their insular community networks. Winter arrived early that year. While Ridgeline Meadows progressively sprouted its skeletal wooden frames against the backdrop of falling snow, I stood at the overlook, camera in my gloved hand, meticulously documenting every detail. My breath frequently fogged the lens. Security personnel in high-visibility vests, projecting an air of authority they did not possess, attempted to drive me away from the public thoroughfare on 3 separate occasions. "Move along, sir. I am on county land." "You are making residents uncomfortable." "I'm not in proximity to any residents," I would retort, but it made no difference. Truth held no sway. The apparatus had its narrative, and they adhered to it rigidly. Around January, my ex-wife sent me a terse, cold message. "Stay away from Megan until this is sorted. I mean it." That communication struck a deeper chord than any unsubstantiated rumor ever could. I read it 3 times before putting my phone away and resuming my documentation. By February, the smear campaign had escalated to industrial proportions, employing fabricated online personas and manipulated photographs. One post falsely claimed I had been observed watching children sledding at the winter festival. I had not been anywhere near it. I had been in Denver with Amelia the entire day. However, facts had become irrelevant. March brought the thaw, and the houses began to take definitive shape, hundreds of them. Roofs were being completed, windows installed, and streets paved to a smooth, dark finish. Families toured model homes, their faces alight with smiles and pointing fingers, blissfully unaware that they were building on my grandfather's ancestral land. One afternoon, I observed a young couple posing for a selfie in front of their prospective home. The woman was laughing heartily, and the man hoisted her playfully into the air. Their joy was palpable, their ignorance even more so. And still, I persevered in my waiting. April ushered in the spring runoff, and the valley transformed into a verdant expanse. Children frolicked on the sidewalks, and dogs tugged their owners along newly established walking trails. HOA newsletters trumpeted record growth, and Karen hosted live video streams focused on community safety, subtly issuing veiled warnings about unidentified individuals near the property line, always accompanied by my photograph. My interactions with the few friends who remained diminished progressively, not due to a lack of desire on my part, but because my calls often went unanswered. By May, all but a small handful of residences were nearing completion. Moving vans lined the streets, garden hoses were in use, watering freshly laid sod, and porch lights cast a warm glow in the evenings. The smear campaign no longer inflicted the same degree of pain, not because it had subsided, but because repetition, like a dull blade, blunts even the sharpest edge. Moreover, Amelia had cautioned me, "You cannot confront them now. You must allow them to complete their transgression." Consequently, I maintained my silence, kept my distance, and observed from the periphery like a phantom haunting his own domain. June arrived, hot and arid. The final row of homes in Phase 3 concluded construction. Open houses were held every weekend, balloons adorned signs, and real estate agents paced driveways with a practiced, albeit forced, enthusiasm. By July, only one residence remained unsold. Lot Fulf, a corner unit boasting a mountain view. I watched a minivan arrive one Saturday morning, and a family emerged, their smiles broad, their eyes wide with anticipation. I harbored no animosity towards them. My resentment was directed at those who had deceived them, at the machination that had convinced them this land was theirs. The sale was finalized midsummer. The last moving truck departed in late August. A porch light flickered on. With that solitary illumination, the development was officially complete. A year of construction, a year of deceit, a year of being cast as the antagonist in the narrative I had never sought to inhabit. Yet, the instant that porch light glowed, the apparatus had crossed an irrevocable threshold. I sat alone in my truck at dusk, surveying the valley. The rooftops shimmered beneath the lingering orange streaks of daylight. Hundreds of homes, the echoes of laughter, the distant barking of dogs, the hiss of sprinklers across manicured lawns. They had constructed an entire world upon my land. I lifted my phone, scrolled to a single contact, and initiated a call. Amelia answered before the first ring had fully concluded. "It's Hale," I stated softly. "It's finished, all 512 for the moment." A beat of silence ensued. Then Amelia exhaled, her voice steady, sharp, and imbued with satisfaction. "Good," she said. "Now, Hale. Now, we reclaim it all." The night following my call to Amelia, I opted for a circuitous route home, traversing Lyons and then Old Stage Road, allowing the encroaching darkness to envelop my truck as the sky deepened into hues of bruised purple. It should have felt like a triumph. A year of patient waiting, of enduring rumors and humiliation, had finally reached its culmination, yet I felt no sense of victory. Instead, I felt an unnerving stillness, akin to the atmosphere preceding a lightning strike. Around 11:14 in the evening, as I reclined in my armchair, the television set to a low volume, a cup of cooling black coffee beside me, my phone vibrated. A solitary notification appeared, devoid of a name or profile picture, simply an email. Subject: "You don't know me, but you need this." The sender's address was a burner, the kind typically employed before a permanent disappearance. For several seconds I merely stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I opened it. Within the email body was a single sentence: "If you wish to bring them down, commence with the attachments." Below it were 3 files: PDF internal zoning summaries, PDF audio file meeting 0422 final Dem 4A, and Excel phase 13 Rev Report LWB XLSX. My heart gave a single powerful thump. I downloaded all 3. The zoning file opened first, revealing pages of internal memos stamped Private Whitmore Holdings. Half of the signatures belonged to county staff, whom I recognized. The other half were forgeries, some amateurish in their execution, others surprisingly professional. The maps depicted precisely what I had already suspected. Every permit issued for Ridgeline Meadows was erroneously linked to an incorrect parcel, not mine, but a fabricated ghost parcel listed under an LLC that had materialized only 18 months prior. A manufactured legal foundation supporting 512 illicit residences. I leaned back, my breath catching in my throat. Next, I opened the Excel spreadsheet. It detailed revenue reports for phases 1, 2, and 3, including dates, buyer names, sale prices, kickbacks, consulting fees, wire transfers, transfers between shell companies, and payments to the HOA board. There, adjacent to Karen Whitmore's name, was an entry labeled Community Engagement Bonus, 130th Furniture Deliverable Maintain Resident Compliance, plus Suppress External Complaints. Suppress External Complaints. That clearly referred to me. My jaw tightened as I scrolled further. Every dollar pilfered from my land was laid bare before me. They were not concealing their actions from one another. They were boasting about them. They had never conceived that someone like me would gain access to such information. Finally, my thumb hovered over the last file, the audio recording. I hesitated. The room seemed to shrink, the silence becoming almost oppressive. I pressed play. The recording commenced with the ambient sounds of shifting chairs and rustling papers, characteristic of a corporate conference room with its inherent acoustic deficiencies and malevolent undertones. Then, a voice I recognized, Whitmore himself, spoke, his tone smooth, confident, and practiced. "All right, let's get this started. Phase 2 is fully sold. Phase 3 is on pace to close by August." Another voice, Karen's, followed, dripping with smug superiority. Residents are compliant. No more questions about the land issue. A man chuckled. Which rumor? That the parcel might still belong to that old engineer. She practically spat my name. Hale, we nipped it in the bud. Whitmore laughed, a sound like steel scraping against concrete. Relax, Karen. He's nobody. He had 50 years to do something with that land. He didn't. We did. Another man joined in. And worst case, we settle. Offer him a few $100,000. He'll roll over. Karen snorted derisively. You haven't met the man. He's stubborn. Keeps coming around. Residents say he's watching people. A brief pause, then she added, But don't worry. The story is spreading. My stomach churned in response. I continued listening. Whitmore's tone deepened, becoming quiet and colder. Good. Make him look unhinged. People fear crazy old men more than lawsuits. If he pushes back too hard, we'll just file harassment claims. Maybe a restraining order. Cops always side with the HOA. Someone inquired, And the deed? What if he actually tries something legal? Whitmore scoffed. Please. Courts move slower than glaciers. By the time some judge notices, we'll be drinking on a beach in the Caymans. The room erupted in chuckles. Then came the sentence that would irrevocably alter everything, for it was not born of carelessness or bravado, but of confession. Whitmore stated plainly, Look, we all know the deed is real, but the beauty is perception beats truth. If he can't fight us in public, he'll never fight us in court, so keep the pressure on. A cornered man eventually leaves. The recording abruptly ceased. I sat there, the phone heavy in my hand. They knew. They had always known. From the initial bulldozer to the final porch light, they were aware the land was mine. They had anticipated my capitulation, my resignation, my flight, but all that character assassination, all that humiliation, all that whispered venom. It was not designed to discredit me. It was intended to exhaust me. And for the first time since this ordeal commenced, I felt something more potent than anger. Purpose. I picked up my phone and dialed Amelia. She answered on the first ring. Rhodes, it's Hale. Her voice sharpened instantly. Did something happen? I forwarded the email and all 3 attachments, I replied. You're about to hear it. A prolonged silence emanated from her end. Then, Amelia inhaled deeply. I hope you're sitting down. I am. Hale. Her voice dropped to a chillingly lethal tone. This isn't merely fraud. This is conspiracy. This is racketeering. This is federal prison. I remained silent. She continued. You've just handed me the equivalent of a nuclear weapon. When this goes to the district attorney and then the federal authorities, Whitmore won't see daylight for a decade. I exhaled once, a deep, steady breath. Good. Tomorrow morning, she instructed, we commence. Bring the deed. Bring everything. And get some sleep if you can. I ended the call. For the first time in months, I felt no fear, no anger. I was ready. The morning sunlight streamed through the blinds of Amelia's office like pale blades. She offered no greeting, no offer of coffee. She merely gestured curtly towards the chair, as if to convey, Sit, we have work to do. I presented her with the deed, the spreadsheets, the printed zoning discrepancies, and the flash drive containing the audio recording. She arranged everything on her desk with the meticulousness of someone assembling an arsenal. Then, she pressed play. Whitmore's distinctive laugh echoed through the room, followed by Karen's smug voice. Every word was venom, and the brick walls seemed to absorb the malice like ancient wounds reawakening to pain. When the recording concluded, Amelia didn't meet my gaze. She simply stated, in a voice that felt like a blade slowly drawn from its sheath, we can put an end to them. She rotated her laptop, revealing a list of agencies. State, federal, financial. Each name represented a potential weapon aimed at dismantling Whitmore's empire. I raised an eyebrow. Are we proceeding at the federal level? Her eyes glinted. Hale, what they have done is not an error. It is a carefully constructed edifice, a deliberate design, a conspiracy, and conspiracies have lifelines. We sever those lifelines and the entire structure, she snapped her fingers, collapses. She walked to the whiteboard where 3 boxes had already been drawn. Citibanks, she wrote, then investors. She then circled Whitmore Holdings in the center, drawing thick arrows pointing inward. This is their oxygen, she explained. We remove their oxygen and the body dies, slowly but inevitably. I leaned forward, elbows resting on my knees. How do we achieve that? We don't need to prove anything yet, she stated. We only need to instill fear in their partners, fear of implication, fear of investigation, fear of financial loss. She turned back to the spreadsheet. Hale, once investors realize they've been deceived, they will turn on Whitmore faster than any lawyer could. Even faster than these zoning discrepancies will be exposed. And once the city comprehends that they approved 512 homes on a non-existent parcel, they will initiate an internal audit that will thoroughly scrutinize every clerk, inspector, and contractor. She gestured towards the loan documents. And the banks? They issued loans based on fraudulent land records. Banks do not tolerate embarrassment. I exhaled slowly. So, we unleash all of them upon Whitmore simultaneously. No, she corrected. You will approach them discreetly with questions, not accusations. Questions compel bureaucrats to delve deeper. I nodded slowly. Ann Whitmore. She clicked the audio file on the screen once more. He's finished. He just doesn't know it yet. She began filling a leather satchel with folders and forms. I'm heading downtown. City clerk's office, state licensing board, the Phase 3 bank. All before lunch. I blinked. All before lunch? She shrugged on her coat, a gesture reminiscent of a gunslinger holstering a weapon. What can I say? I'm hungry. She handed me a small digital recorder. People will contact you. Journalists, perhaps. HOA board members. Whitmore himself. Record everything. I slipped it into my pocket. Amelia, how long until they realize something is happening? Oh, she replied, moving towards the door. They'll know within hours. Her hand paused on the knob. And when they realize it's you? A faint smile curved the corner of her mouth. They'll learn the truth. You didn't lose your land. They lost their future. I stepped out into the bright Colorado afternoon, and that's when I witnessed the first domino fall. I wasn't consciously heading towards Ridgeline Meadows, but my truck seemed to possess an independent will, because 10 miles later, I found myself turning onto the smooth boulevard leading to the development. A distinct feeling of change permeated the air the moment I approached the monument sign. A white city truck was parked askew at the entrance, its hazard lights flashing. An orange ladder leaned against the stone pillar. A man clad in a high-visibility city vest stood atop the ladder, affixing a bright red rectangle to the HOA's polished marble welcome sign. Stop work order, City of Boulder. All construction, sales, and modifications halted pending full title investigation. My truck rolled to a halt. I blinked. That was remarkably swift. Amelia's efficiency was astounding. Before I could fully process the scene, the glass doors of the HOA office burst open and Karen stormed out, heels clicking, hair bobbing, her voice shrill enough to shatter glass. Excuse me, you cannot place that here. We have permits. The city inspector didn't even glance at her. Ma'am, he said, his voice weary, your development is under review for title inconsistencies. We have no inconsistencies, she protested. He pointed lazily towards the red tag. Talk to the city attorney. I'm just following orders. Karen sputtered, literally, like a kettle on the verge of boiling over. This is harassment. This is politically motivated. The inspector shrugged. Could be, or could be fraud. Not my department. He then proceeded to staple another red tag to the gatehouse. 3 residents observed from across the street, their phones out, whispering amongst themselves. Karen noticed me then. Her eyes widened, a look of pure, unadulterated hatred contorting her features. You, she hissed, you did this, you pathetic, bitter. But her sentence was cut short because at that precise instant another truck arrived. This one belonged to the county government. The individual who stepped out was holding yet another set of official documents and made his way directly towards the Homeowners Association's administrative office. Karen's lower lip quivered. I engaged my truck's transmission, and as I slowly, deliberately passed her, she cried out, "You won't prevail. We have influential allies. Do you comprehend me?" I made no eye contact. I offered no greeting, no condescending grin. I merely uttered under my breath, "All I required was an interval of time." Then I departed, leaving her standing motionless beneath the crimson notice fluttering in the breeze. It was the initial pebble tumbling, initiating a cascade. She possessed no capacity to halt its momentum. By the subsequent dawn, visual records of the scarlet advisories posted throughout Ridgeline Meadows had already disseminated across half the county. Certain inhabitants experienced alarm, while others demanded explanations. A significant majority attributed the situation to an overreach of governmental authority. A select few murmured my name. This was precisely the catalyst Whitmore required to retaliate. If Amelia operated with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, Whitmore favored the blunt force of a sledgehammer. The initial impact struck at 7:12 in the morning. A digital link arrived on my cellular device sent by individuals I hadn't encountered in years. A local news outlet, scarcely more than a mouthpiece for the HOA's gossip network, published a disparaging article. It labeled me a dangerous trespasser connected to numerous incidents and conveyed a warning from the HOA to its residents. My likeness was positioned beneath the headline, depicted as weary, unshaven, and suspicious. The narrative manufactured falsehoods into apparent truths, portraying me as a mentally unstable recluse, an aggressor of families, and someone who refused medical attention following a marital dissolution. Karen provided a statement. "Our residents are in a state of terror. Our sole desire is for the safety of our children." This was attributed to Karen Whitmore, the president of the HOA. I almost acknowledged the audacity of her claims. Almost. The second offensive arrived at 9:03 in the morning. A courier presented me with an envelope. Inside was a temporary restraining order initiated by the Ridgeline Meadows HOA, citing harassment, stalking, and trespassing as the grounds. I released a breath devoid of mirth. Predictable. A desperate maneuver, yet the TRO carried substantial weight. It prohibited me from entering or approaching the development. Simply coming within 500 yards of the property would result in my apprehension. Amelia had forewarned me of this tactic and advised me on how to respond appropriately. Consequently, I adhered to her counsel. I operated strictly within the bounds of the law. Whitmore, however, did not. The third blow followed shortly thereafter. A communication from an unrecognized telephone number. I initiated the recording function precisely as Amelia had instructed. "Mr. Hale," a man purred. "This is Trevor Lang, legal counsel for Mr. Whitmore. My client is prepared to extend a highly favorable settlement offer." I offered no verbal response. "We will arrange a wire transfer of $200,000 within 24 hours. All that is required is your signature, relinquishing any claim of financial interest in the disputed territory." I remained silent. His tone grew colder. "You are making a significant error. The courts will not find in your favor. Public perception already regards you as a threat. Should this situation escalate, the outcome will be unfavorable for you." I terminated the call. Then came the fourth assault. I did not venture into Ridgeline Meadows. Indeed, I was legally barred from doing so. However, I was at liberty to traverse a public county thoroughfare that bisected the ridge. This was land over which the HOA exercised absolutely no jurisdiction. Therefore, I positioned my vehicle there. With the engine deactivated, I sat legally and peacefully just 50 yards beyond the perimeter stipulated by the TRO. From this vantage point, I could observe the development spread out below. It comprised rooftops, cul-de-sacs, meticulously maintained lawns, a perfect edifice constructed upon misappropriated land. Approximately 10 minutes elapsed before I observed their arrival. 3 imposing black SUVs proceeded from the direction of the HOA office and came to a halt precisely at the edge of the property line. They did not infringe upon the county road. They could not. The TRO did not extend its protection to them in relation to me. Rather, it shielded me from them. 2 security personnel disembarked. Then, a third door opened, revealing Whitmore himself. Impeccably attired in a navy suit, with a hairstyle indicative of considerable expense and sunglasses obscuring the eyes of a man accustomed to victory. Karen disembarked after him, her complexion already flushed and her body vibrating with fury. They were compelled to traverse from their pristine asphalt onto dusty gravel, onto land they neither owned nor controlled, and certainly did not anticipate standing upon. Whitmore halted 10 feet from my vehicle's window, still positioned on his side of the TRO demarcation, thus technically remaining secure. I lowered the window approximately halfway. He offered a smile, that chillingly practiced smile of a politician. "Mr. Hale," he stated, "you have precipitated considerable disruption." I offered no reply. He gestured expansively, much like a preacher addressing a congregation. The red advisories, the inquiries from the city, the incessant calls from investors to our office. "You are projecting an image of irresponsibility," Karen interjected sharply. "You are a menace. You are instilling fear in families." I maintained my silence. Whitmore's smile wavered perceptibly. "My offer remains on the table. Accept the settlement and withdraw your claim. This is your opportunity to avert further complications." I met the gaze behind his sunglasses. "You have vacated your dominion, Mr. Whitmore." He stiffened noticeably. I continued, "You have elected to stand upon a public thoroughfare to converse with an individual you deem inconsequential." Karen's lip curled dismissively. "Do you genuinely believe this carries any significance?" I inclined my body slightly forward from the window, my voice measured and calm. "You erected those dwellings upon land that did not belong to you." Whitmore exhibited no outward reaction, yet a subtle tremor behind his lenses betrayed an inner disturbance. I added, "And I am reclaiming all of it." Karen's countenance contorted, betraying a potent mixture of outrage and apprehension. "You will not succeed. We possess influence. We have extensive networks. You are insignificant." I did not deign to glance in her direction. My focus remained steadfastly on Whitmore. "Amusing," I remarked softly. "That is not the assessment provided by the city inspector yesterday." A fissure appeared, barely perceptible, yet undeniably present. Whitmore exhaled slowly through his nostrils. "We shall confront each other in court," he declared. He turned and retreated towards his SUVs without uttering another word. Karen pursued him, vociferating something unintelligible. I elevated the window, engaged the drive gear, and proceeded forward, legally, smoothly, and with composure. In my rearview mirror, I observed the transformation. Whitmore no longer exuded the aura of royalty. He appeared as a man who had finally apprehended the unsettling reality that the very ground beneath his feet was not his to claim. The collapse did not manifest with the suddenness of thunder. Instead, it resembled the insidious decay of rot, gradual, persistent, and then unequivocally impossible to disregard. By the time I returned to my residence that evening, the initial crack had already widened far beyond anyone's anticipation. My phone vibrated at 7:41 in the evening. A captured image from Amelia appeared. It depicted the escrow account for Ridgeline Development, marked as frozen pending review, a cold, clinical designation, the kind of communication that effectively terminates projects before any implements are even grasped for construction. Financial institutions do not require concrete evidence, they require doubt, and Amelia had supplied them with an abundance of it. I reclined in my chair, allowing the weight of the truth to permeate my senses. Whitmore's financial lifeline had been severed. A short while later, another message arrived, this time from Amelia's assistant. 2 major lending institutions had withdrawn their support. An emergency investor conference was scheduled for 9 o'clock the following morning. Ridgeline was no longer merely bleeding, it was hemorrhaging. When predatory sharks detect the scent of blood, they do not pause to ascertain the identity of the injured party. They simply circle, patiently awaiting the cessation of movement from their potential victim. I abstained from any overt celebration, yet I allowed myself a moment of respite. The subsequent morning, a voicemail awaited my attention. "This is Deputy City Attorney Garvey. We wish to arrange an interview with you concerning potential misrepresentations within the Ridgeline Meadows approval filings." misrepresentations, not mere errors, not simple queries. That particular designation carries a distinct gravitas. I contacted Amelia. She responded instantaneously. "Did you secure it?" she inquired. "I did," I confirmed. A faint click of a lighter was audible on her end, a single quiet inhalation. "The city is now engaged," she murmured. "Once they commence their scrutiny, the rest will unravel rapidly." Around midday, I once again positioned my vehicle on the county road, overlooking ridgeline meadows. However, the scene had dramatically altered from my previous observation. Where once there had been golf carts, smiling couples, and joggers with earbuds, there were now individuals clustered together, exhibiting confusion and anger, clutching their crimson tag notices and HOA newsletters as if they were official summonses. A man was vehemently arguing with a contractor. A woman in athletic attire appeared on the verge of tears. Someone repeatedly uttered, "What does this signify? What does this signify?" Then, a gentleman attired in a Broncos hoodie identified me. He did not march over aggressively. He did not issue threats, he stated. He approached with the somber demeanor of someone who had just discovered the potential absence of solid ground beneath his dwelling. "You, Logan?" he inquired, halting at the property boundary. "I am," I confirmed. He nodded slowly, a contemplative expression revealing a mixture of apprehension and resigned acceptance. "They informed us you were jeopardizing everything," he said quietly. "They claimed you were attempting to have all of us expelled." I maintained my direct gaze. "I am not your adversary," I stated. "The individuals who propagated deceit to both of us are." His eyes drifted back towards the unfolding disarray behind him. "My wife continually questions whether we have acquired a genuine residence," he murmured. He swallowed audibly. "If you possess knowledge, please convey the truth." "You will receive it shortly," I assured him. He nodded and stepped back. Then arrived the moment when the universe seemed inclined to bestow a welcome amelioration upon the day. A silver sedan sped into the HOA parking area as if its driver harbored homicidal intent. The door was slammed with force. Karen Whitmore emerged, her hair disheveled, her makeup smudged, and a folder clutched in her hand as if she intended to bludgeon someone to death with it. She did not merely enter the HOA office, she detonated within it. Even from my distant vantage point, her voice laced with distress carried across the air. "I have children, Ben. I will not face federal imprisonment because of your avarice. I explicitly instructed you to maintain a clean operation." A man's voice responded, defensive and panicked. She steamrolled his protestations. "No, I do not desire excuses. Rectify this immediately or I will disclose everything." That pronouncement had its effect. Even from this distance I perceived the impact of those words, akin to a hammer blow. Moments later, she burst from the office, her eyes wild, her breathing rapid, muttering into her cellular device, "I do not care what the attorney advised. I am not accepting culpability for this. He deceived me. He exploited me." The vehicle accelerated away from the lot with such velocity that gravel was ejected a considerable distance behind her. The initial betrayer had fled the fortified structure, but the most satisfying element was yet to come. The king himself finally made his appearance. Whitmore materialized at the property line a few minutes later, stripped of his suit, his sunglasses absent, his tie loosened, and the top button of his shirt unfastened. He presented the appearance of someone who had endured at least 2 days without sleep and had lost a confrontation with whatever reflective surface he had consulted. He called out to me across the gravel expanse. "Logan, can we converse?" I lowered my window by precisely 2 inches. "No further proximity," I stated evenly. He emitted a breathy chuckle, devoid of amusement and brimming with excessive fear. "What is it that you desire?" he inquired, his voice trembling. "Monetary compensation, acreage, a settlement. Name your price." It was the first time since the commencement of this entire affair that I detected it. Not arrogance, not bravado, but pure, unadulterated panic. He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "The city attorney has contacted me," he confessed softly, as if making a sacramental confession. There it was, the critical flaw, the very weakness Amelia had been anticipating. I finally responded, "You constructed an empire upon land that was not yours." He blinked, a gesture of capitulation. "And now," I continued, "you are about to discover the repercussions." I elevated the window slowly, deliberately, a silent execution. Whitmore remained immobile, offering no shouts, no displays of bravado. He simply stood there, diminutive and utterly depleted, observing the dissolution of everything he had painstakingly constructed. He was a man finally acknowledging that the avalanche he had set in motion months prior was now thundering downhill, and he was positioned directly at its base. They assert that courtrooms are chilling environments characterized by marble, polished oak, and the pronouncement of judgment. However, that particular morning, as I entered through the grand double doors, clutching my deed within a worn leather portfolio, the atmosphere crackled with an almost palpable energy, as if the very chamber comprehended the impending proceedings. Every available seat was occupied. Homeowners, members of the press, city officials, and investors, drawn by the scent of impending disaster, had nonetheless converged. And seated at the defense table was Benjamin Whitmore. His tie was new, but his eyes conveyed a weariness that spoke of prolonged suffering. He resembled a man who had not slept for an entire week, for the monstrosity he had conjured was now actively breaching the very walls of his existence. Judge Hendricks entered, a figure of sternness, sharp intellect, and old-school demeanor, a man whose tolerance had a lifespan measured in infinitesimal increments. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. Once everyone had resumed their seats, the judge wasted no time. "Let us proceed. Counsel, present your initial witness." Amelia arose. A diminutive figure, yet she possessed a presence that commanded respect, much like the inherent weight of iron. "Your Honor," she began, "we wish to commence with a fundamental matter. Ownership." She gestured towards me. I stepped onto the witness stand, raised my right hand, and was administered the oath. My palms were not perspiring. My heart was not racing. This was not apprehension. This was relief personified, making its grand entrance cloaked in the guise of justice. Amelia approached with measured steps, allowing the courtroom to achieve a profound silence, audible only by the faint hum of the lighting fixtures. "Mr. Hale, do you recognize this document?" She held aloft the deed. Its edges were yellowed, imbued with the aroma of tobacco and the embedded memories of my grandfather, deeply woven into its very fibers. "Yes," I responded. "It has been in my family's possession since 1974. And have you at any point relinquished, transferred, sold, donated, reassigned, or otherwise conveyed this land to anyone?" "No, never." She nodded, then turned the deed to face the judge. "Your Honor, this document represents the original title. My client's name is clearly inscribed. His grandfather's signature is present, and the county stamp is both authentic and verifiable." Whitmore's legal counsel immediately stood. "Objection. Chain of custody." Amelia did not even deign to glance in his direction. "Be seated," the judge instructed calmly. "The deed predates your client's company by 40 years. A few muffled chuckles rippled through the assembled spectators. Amelia continued, "Mr. Hale, where did you reside during the 5 years that Ridgeline Meadows was under construction?" "In Colorado Springs, approximately 2 hours away." "And did any representative from Ridgeline, the HOA, or the county make contact with you regarding construction activities on your property?" "No." "And upon your return to your land, how many residences did you find erected upon it?" I directed my gaze squarely at Whitmore. "All of them." A palpable wave moved through the room. Whispers, gasps, and someone audibly muttering, "Jesus!" Amelia stepped aside. No further questions. Whitmore's attorney approached, projecting an air of smug confidence despite the circumstances. "Mr. Hale, is it not true that you did not visit your property for a span of 5 years?" "Yes." "Is it not also true that you did not fence it, did not occupy it, and did not monitor it?" "Yes." And is it not a fact that you only returned to the land once it had significantly appreciated in value? I offered a polite smile. No, I returned to scatter my grandfather's ashes. A profound silence ensued, followed by a low murmur of sympathy spreading through the gallery. The attorney abruptly shifted his approach. No further questions. I stepped down, but the true dramatic climax had yet to unfold. The next individual to take the stand was Karen Whitmore. She entered the courtroom resembling a wounded animal, still possessing a predatory edge, yet visibly bleeding from a multitude of unseen injuries. She raised her right hand, was sworn in, and assumed a rigid posture. Amelia approached her with the deliberate gentleness of a surgeon preparing to extract a bullet without the administration of anesthesia. Mrs. Whitmore, are you the president of the Homeowners Association for Ridgeline Meadows? Yes. And did you, at any point, personally verify the ownership of the land over which your HOA claims jurisdiction? Karen swallowed with difficulty. I trusted the developer. That was not my question, Amelia stated firmly. Karen's eyes darted nervously. That's typically how it operates. Amelia then held up a sheet of paper. This is a captured image from your HOA's Facebook page. Do you recognize this particular post? Karen squinted, her face draining of color. There, prominently displayed, was her post, which vilified me as a suspected stalker engaged in photographing children. Karen stammered, "That was a matter of community concern." Mrs. Whitmore, Amelia interjected firmly, you disseminated a false accusation against my client, alleging criminal behavior, with absolutely no substantiating evidence. Do you deny this? I was informed to do so. You informed others, Amelia pressed. That is precisely the point. Karen's composed facade began to crack. Her voice escalated to a shrill pitch. He was lurking. He was documenting everything. What was I supposed to surmise? Amelia tilted her head. That the land belonged to him. A deafening silence descended. Karen's breath hitched perceptibly. Tears welled in her eyes. The judge leaned forward perceptibly. Mrs. Whitmore, did you, at any juncture, personally confirm the parcel identification number of the land upon which your HOA office is situated? She froze, utterly paralyzed. I do not know. You do not know, the judge repeated, his tone indicating disbelief. Neither a yes nor a no, simply an admission of ignorance. Karen visibly shrank. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God." Then came the decisive moment. Amelia produced a small digital recording device. Your Honor, we have an audio file that was submitted anonymously to my office. Whitmore's attorney immediately sprang to his feet. Objection. We have no knowledge of the source. Amelia raised a single finger. However, it has been authenticated by the State Forensic Audio Laboratory. Judge Hendricks waved his hand dismissively. Proceed with playing it. The entire courtroom collectively held its breath. A click, followed by static. Then, Whitmore's voice resonated throughout the room. Who cares about the deed? By the time he figures it out, we'll be on a yacht in the Caymans. A few gasps erupted. Someone uttered a muffled curse. Then came the final, irrefutable evidence. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. The recording ceased. Karen appeared as though she had been physically struck. The homeowners' faces reflected a profound sense of betrayal. The investors' expressions conveyed a desire to physically assault someone. Whitmore. He did not even raise his head. Judge Hendricks removed his spectacles, rubbed his brow, and exhaled audibly through his nose, a visceral reaction akin to a bull encountering a red flag. Mr. Whitmore, he stated with unnerving calmness, please stand. Whitmore rose, his posture diminished. The judge's voice lowered to a tone that possessed the gravitas to cleave through stone. I have witnessed instances of fraud. I have encountered greed. However, I rarely encounter such a pronounced degree of sheer arrogance. He shifted his gaze to encompass the entire courtroom. The law is not a blank canvas upon which individuals may arbitrarily redraw its lines to suit their personal convenience. He then returned his attention to Whitmore. You have erected an entire community upon land that you never rightfully possessed. You have submitted falsified documentation. You have deliberately misled purchasers. You have interfered with governmental records, and you have slandered the rightful proprietor. He lifted his gavel but did not immediately strike. Mr. Hale, he addressed me directly, do you have any statement to offer prior to the pronouncement of my ruling? I rose slowly, my voice steady, serene, bolstered by decades of unspoken truths, now finally liberated. Your Honor, I began, directing my gaze towards Whitmore. He claims he built a community. I paused. No. My voice dropped, imbued with a chilling finality. You constructed a crime scene. I merely own the land upon which it is situated. Someone in the gallery whispered, Oh, damn. Another voiced, That's it. He's finished. The judge raised his gavel. This court finds unequivocally in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Logan Hale. A resounding bang echoed. Ridgeline Development is hereby mandated to cease all operational activities, provide complete restitution, vacate all illegally occupied territories, and submit all internal documentation to the district attorney's office. His eyes sharpened with intensity. This matter is now formally referred for a criminal investigation. Whitmore visibly sagged, as if his very bones had been dissolved. Karen covered her face, her shoulders shaking. The homeowners erupted into a cacophony of whispers, a complex blend of apprehension, relief, and profound shock. I closed my eyes, not in triumph, not in a desire for vengeance, but simply in a state of release. A burden that had weighed upon me for 5 years had finally been lifted. Yet the narrative was not entirely concluded. Regaining legal possession of the land represented justice. What would follow thereafter was redemption. When the judge's gavel fell, I did not linger to witness the ensuing commotion outside. For some individuals, justice is a boisterous affair, but for me, it was a quiet, almost gentle experience, akin to a heavy door finally sealing shut after years of incessant creaking on its hinges. Amelia walked beside me through the courthouse's rear corridor, our footsteps echoing off the ancient stone. You handled that admirably, Logan, she remarked. I had the finest guide, I replied. She raised an eyebrow slightly. Do not attempt to placate me. We still have decisions to finalize. She was entirely correct. Reclaiming the land did not magically resolve the tangled repercussions of Whitmore's actions. 512 families were currently residing upon soil that, by law, belonged to me. These were individuals with children, with mortgages, with aspirations, and with their share of human imperfections, much like the rest of us. That evening, I drove to County Road 14 and reclined on the hood of my truck, observing the distant lights of Ridgeline Meadows as they illuminated my grandfather's ridge. A settlement constructed upon a foundation of deceit, yet populated by families living their lives with integrity within its confines. If I were to forcibly expel them, I would gain nothing but a desolate hill and the lingering stain of unpleasant recollections. By morning, I had a clear understanding of my desired course of action. I requested Amelia meet me at the familiar local diner. She arrived bearing 2 cups of coffee and that characteristic expression of weariness tempered by fierce determination that she always displayed after an arduous struggle. So, she stated, sliding into the booth opposite me. What now? I am not evicting anyone, I declared. She remained silent for a moment, observing me intently as if weighing the significance of my words. You're serious. I am. You realize you could walk away with millions, she observed. I have relinquished possession of many things, I responded quietly. Financial gain has never been the primary concern for me. She leaned back in her seat and exhaled through her nose. Then, what is it that you desire, Logan? A land trust, permanently established. The land will be safeguarded, the residents will remain, and there will be no homeowners association ever again. Her lips curved into an expression that bordered on genuine admiration. You know, she remarked, you might actually possess a nobler character than your appearance suggests. Do not propagate that particular rumor, I advised. I've invested considerable effort in cultivating my grumpy persona." She emitted a laugh, a sound that was relatively infrequent for her. The establishment of the trust required 2 weeks, characterized by extended days filled with signatures, official filings, and documentation as thick as winter bark. However, upon its completion, it felt as though the very ridge itself had collectively exhaled. The families would retain their residences, the land would remain in its natural, wild state beneath the surface, and the insidious shadow of Whitmore's avarice would never again encroach upon it. The evening that the final documents were formalized, Megan ascended the ridge to find me. She stood silently beside me for some time, observing the twilight descending upon the dense canopy of trees. "My mother informed me," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "What you accomplished, it was precisely the correct course of action." She then gently intertwined her fingers with mine. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried more weight than any official decree the magistrate could have imposed. "I am immensely proud of you, Father." I remained silent, unable to trust my voice to remain steady. A few days subsequently, the entire community convened within the confines of the high school gymnasium. Property owners, representatives from various organizations, our neighbors, everyone was present. I approached the podium. "My designation is Logan Hale," I announced, "and I will not be dispossessing you of your homes." A wave of audible gasps swept through the assembly, accompanied by tears and the visible relaxation of tense shoulders. "This territory is being placed into a public trust," I elucidated further. "Henceforth, there will be no more exploitative charges, no more falsified documents, no more menacing threats. This elevated ground belongs to the inhabitants who reside upon it and to those who came generations before us." The initial murmur of applause gradually escalated, swelling like an approaching wave. Following the conclusion of the gathering, individuals queued to extend their handshakes. Some offered apologies, others expressed their gratitude, and a few simply desired to meet my gaze directly. However, the individual I least anticipated encountering was Karen. Stripped of her usual adornments, without her customary footwear, and entirely devoid of her former self-assurance, she stood before me, her fingers nervously interlacing. I offer my sincerest regrets," she stammered. I observed her for a brief period, not with animosity, nor even a sense of triumph, but with a profound understanding that her present predicament was a burden she alone must bear. "You have a challenging journey ahead of you," I stated. "I am aware," she responded. "Then embark upon it," she affirmed with a nod, before stepping aside. And remarkably, I found myself wishing her well. The following morning, I ascended the incline, carrying the small metal container holding my grandfather's cremated remains. For the first time in many years, the very air seemed to embrace my return. I dispersed the last remnants of him across the landscape he had cherished. His domain, now my domain, secured for perpetuity. "Rest now, my dear," I whispered. "It is secure." The gentle zephyr carried his essence across the expansive valley, and I sensed a profound liberation within myself, a long-held confinement finally yielding. It was not elation, nor a yearning for retribution, but rather a deep sense of serenity. The land was liberated, the families were safeguarded, justice had been served. And for the first time since this entire ordeal commenced, I inhaled the breath of a man who had finally achieved his ultimate purpose.